just have one thing to say to you, Mike Moore. It's hard to fool an actor because if you're really in the scene, you actually can understand. I've seen a lot of people who've been lawyers who have gone on stage and been actors, and they're pretty good sometimes. It takes a while, but as a professional or a non-professional, it depends on when you are being paid or not being paid. I was not fooled, and nor should I be fooled in the press, and nor do I find myself fooled when I go back and pick up this information from Frontline and see how you perceived how I acted in front of you. Was this a way of augmenting your presence as if there's royalty before me? Or is this somehow just indicative of the way you wanted to diminish the character and quality of what was tainted? I was tainted. You didn't want to be tainted. But I am amused to the point of realizing that there's something wrong here. Again, Elsinore is a little bit smelly. And what I am about to be asked is what was going on and who or what happened in this room. So, what is your question?
Is exactly this, based on Mike Moore Part B. Why did he say these things about you?
Well, that was to minimize and to diminish me as the...
What would he gain with this?
After 2 years...
Prestige?
I'm sorry?
What would he gain by doing this?
Well, he would gain the distancing factor. I think that from the characterization of a scared rabbit, which I definitely was not, and not in any way afraid of a man who is in the room where I feel like I'm very comfortable. The idea was that as the stalking horse for Jeffrey Wigand back in '93, he became his own man at one point or other, and then he became circuitously involved in the screening or the scripting, which was probably a thing that devolved from an idea from the hand of Lowell Bergman. I don't know. It just seemed to be that way. Anyway, what happened in that room at that particular time was a very short meeting where I sat down and I did ask him, Riley, are you interested in arresting me? He was dressed in black, which was a traditional thing for him, as I recall, and he might have laughed. It was not exactly meant to be humorous. I was actually thinking back, well, if the Department of Justice can't break this order, if my own lawyers, Foxton Moisey and Alan Morrison and the entire litigation group are looking at this, they can't break Judge Wine's order. What is it that gives any kind of credibility to you? And I believe in that same interview with Frontline, you're saying that you're looking at a document that I handed you. Well, and that document is probably the nastiest document around. It's called the Anson-Yeaman document. And I know what I did to get it, what I sacrificed, and what it took. And that took a lot of nerve. And if I had the nerve to do that, Why in the world would I feel from you? I mean, just as an actor, a person acting it out. Again, why would I feel that you were someone that was going to frighten me? You weren't. And additionally, I was with, as I say, the best of the best. Tobacco lawyers are not bad lawyers. They're good. You don't find a bad tobacco lawyer. They get paid to be good. One of the best, as I said, is David Baronick. No question about it. And in the sense of being afraid or in trepidation or fear, I think that's a joke. And I never believed you for 1 minute. But as I say, I never really had an opportunity to question this until now, and I want the record straight. So we sat down, or I sat down. He may have wanted to take the position that this is best for him to stand, and he wanted to know how I met Don Barrett and Dickie Scruggs. And, well, the obvious part of that is he already knew. I mean, there's no question about it. He wasn't down there. He didn't fly down to Pascagoula from Jackson to find out how I met these people. He wanted to know if I had been somehow coached or somehow brought down there. No, in reality, my grandmother owned some 30 acres of Ocean Springs, and then my grandfather died in the old soldiers' home. My mother was from Jackson. My father died in Jackson. My sister lived in Jackson, and she eventually died in Jackson. They're all dead. But nevertheless, the contacts that I had, and by the way, I did go to Ole Miss for at least 2 semesters to get a master's, full load scholarship. But nevertheless, without confusing things, there wasn't much that we had to say. I was interested in what he wanted to say to me, and basically to clean up things and make sure that he could support, as far as his conscience, if he were put into a position which he would never have to testify because he had immunity. But nevertheless, if he was saying to me, this is your doing. You came down here. You initiated everything. Well, Mike Moore, official elected member of the Attorney General's office, I am interested in the question, but the reality is, there's so many reasons for me to be down here. But I can have to tell you, if I'm going to tell you any kind of truth, you want me to say that I was lured? Well, yeah, I could say that, but in effect, at the time, I really didn't feel like I was being lured. There were promises that were made in order to protect my life, in order to protect me, but I had already gone through that in Kentucky, so I was really looking at a job. So I asked him, if you're familiar with me in some way or other, and you seem to be, and you should be, because I've been in the business for a long time, and I've been in the press for an even longer time. What is it about this that I'm missing? Because if you're familiar with me, you're also, I have to tell you, even if you are, that I'm under an injunction. I can't talk with you about anything, so to speak, in dealing with the tobacco issues legally. Now, are you going to jump that hoop and say that you have a right? Well, it was interesting, his response, and I'm looking back on Reginald Tom and all these people who were turned down by Judge Wine, and I'm saying, okay, well, I know the difference, and I know the law, and certainly I'm going to have to admit to whether he says it's going to be pretty wild or esoteric. And so he tells me, well, I know. I think it was somebody by the name of Chip or Wink or something like that, a purely Kentucky name. And he says, well, I know the Attorney General in Kentucky. And I thought, well, that's pretty good, isn't it? That really gets you over this little hoop of talking to me. I'm not supposed to talk to my attorneys, and even if I were, I'm in a room with an Attorney General, and the Attorney General is taking me aside in Mississippi, establishing jurisdiction over me and over Judge Wine's order. Wait a minute. Where's the law here? I'm curious. Well, I'm seeing the same things throughout the entire history, wiping out Kentucky entirely, looking back in 1988, forgetting that that's even part. In 88 to 94, the lawsuit in 93, the fact that I'm a stalking horse for the soon-to-become predator of the news, sort of a puppet show, a dog and pony show, put on by Lowell Bergman and company, and I'm totally appalled that this man is saying things that, I know the guy, I know the Attorney General, and besides that, he adds to that he has been a former president of the Attorney General's Association, which, by the way, ends up fairly stout with that $1.5 million for 10 years after the master settlement agreement. Just looking ahead there a little bit, Mike. But nevertheless, where Mike Moore was to me was a confusing position, because I met Don Barrett in Herbst. Dick Scruggs walked in uninvited, and Dick Scruggs was the one who said, with Don Barrett, what can we do for you? And of course, what could you do for me? You can give me a job if you want to. That's all that was said, essentially. No information given. That was back in March. Then we had the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice couldn't come in and would not come in. And the reason for that was obvious. It was against the law. So I'm asking, what in the way of this meaning did we lose in terms of the big joke here? I'm looking at a man who's less than the feds, but he still got the state authority. I mean, he could arrest me right there. Or he could say to me, tell me what you know. And essentially, that's where he was going. He was telling me, can I immunize myself here in some way or another? And a few years later, after the master settlement, had another meeting with him, same thing. He was basically cleaning up his act, and the same thing with a witness. And so where I fail to see any value in that statement, which I heard, is that it was purely scripted, everything, and the intention was to vitiate, if not totally do away with, the identity of where this information came from, and essentially to bury it, certainly in terms of Louisville. Even though I had to continue to fight the battle for the boys from Ole Miss, and I did, in the federal lawsuit, which had my name on it, but they had the John Doe's, which I didn't even know. And yet I soon later, much later, find out who the hell these people are. And they're they're pretty creepy. And so my own thoughts are, thank you very much.